Well, welcome everyone to Happy Hour. Glad you hopped in. Some might have joined us a little bit early, and so we are always happy to hear from our community. This is a topic that Heather and I went back and forth on. I was like, why would you ever leave and go over to Microsoft? Because I was so happy in my Google environment. And Heather was showing me some of the cool stuff that she was doing, and she won me over. So I wanted to share with the community, why was I won over? What is it that got my attention? And that way everybody can kind of start seeing maybe other opportunities. I'm still using Google. I'll tell you right now, I still use Google for things that are easy to collaborate, like Google Docs.
Yeah.
My gosh, Google Sheets. You know, it's really hard to beat that collaboration piece. So it's kind of like a, I'll share along the way, what have I replaced each app with? What's my journey been looking like so far? And where am I still hanging out in Google, but where have I, transitioned over to Microsoft? And then Heather, you're in that, you started that journey before I did. So, being able to hear kind of what it is that you've done along the way as well is helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've done it. I converted 2 companies over to it. And I had help. I didn't do it myself. So we had a team that helped us with that migration, and that made it so lovely. But yes, we're doing all kinds of cool things. And along the way, I fell in love with Power Automate. So we're going to be talking about that next time on Happy Hour. So that's kind of exciting too.
That's right. So this is a 2-part series where this week we're going to be talking about why migrate. So what were the things that won me over? And then next week will be, or not next week, but next episode, we will be talking about more Heather's Power Automate. So what has she done so far? And automation. It's kind of a 2-part series here going on.
We do.
So you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, me? Introduce myself? Oh, you guys all know
Sure.
me. I'm Heather Satterley. I have a company called Satterley Training Consulting. So I do education. I do process optimization training and consulting, and I do all kinds of things. I do a little speaking. I do a whole bunch of things, and I do Happy Hour. But no, really, I've been a CPA actually, I haven't been a CPA that long, but I've been an accountant for most of my adult life. And I love technology. I love tinkering. I love learning new things. And I love all of you. So.
My gosh, that's so true. Being able to hang out with our buddies, to collaborate and be part of the community. One of the things I feel like has been most rewarding, and my reason for getting up in the morning, is I enjoy going out and researching. To me, that's fun. And I really like bringing back and processing. I enjoy looking at other people's processes. I enjoy creating training, and I really like being able to work with apps. I love pulling them into my clients' businesses. I love pulling them into my own businesses. Where can I automate? Where can I pull in a solution for that? And it means that sometimes I find a winner, and sometimes I'm like, well, that was really cool on the outside. So it's allowed for me to be in this position to say with our community, here's what I've tried. I'm happy to share it. So
absolutely.
Love this community.
And I think it's important. I love what you just said, Liz, about, it doesn't always work. We're the Happy Hour, right? We try stuff and we have fails. We try stuff and we're like, Liz just said, that's really cool, but it's not for me. But I think that the thing that we both share and that we love, sharing with you, our community, is that we love innovation and we love new technology, and we love seeing what's new and making our lives and our clients' lives and our community's lives easier. So, and I feel like that's what technology is meant to do. It's not meant to make things harder. It's there to help us work smarter. But you have to
invest some time into it. So, one of the things that's happened is migrating the firm over is not automatic. There's pieces that you have to do along the way in order to make sure that, all of the information gets shared over. And just like Heather, I did not migrate my own firm. I actually networked with somebody who provides that as a service, and they migrated over the firm. It's just like us as being consultants or us being in the accounting firms, being able to be that provider of that service, I'm a big believer in. And there's so many things that I'm heavily dependent on my workflow that I didn't want to have that piece of the conversion be on my plate because of the nuances that I didn't know to look out for.
Yeah. And here is one of the apps
right
we're looking at that we both use and we both love, and that has been a huge impact in our lives and in Happy Hour's life. So I've been using Ignition for, I don't even know how long. I've been using it for a very long time. When I first heard about Ignition, I'm like, but it's engagement letters. It doesn't help me do my job better. and the thing is what we realize is that it's all the things that are not accounting that keep us away from doing our job better. So that when we can find technology that can handle those things, then we can do our job better, because we can really focus on that rather than doing what I like to call non-value added activities, which is not, I didn't coin that phrase. I borrowed it from somebody. But, I think that Ignition is a perfect example of technology that, it helps me run my firm, and it's saved me, I don't even know how many hours it saved me, countless hours of having to deal with engagement letters and billing. So we're thrilled to be partnering with Ignition for 2022. They are our champagne level sponsor. And we're thrilled. And what people maybe don't know is, I've used Ignition for years in my practices. We use Ignition in Happy Hour. Yep. So all of our, all the things that we do, our sponsorships, when we're doing things, events and things like that with some of our sponsors, we actually used Ignition for that as well. It's not just for accounting firms. It's actually, there's other types of companies that are now using it. It works perfectly for what we do. So cool stuff.
Well, even we had a conversation today, sending out an engagement letter to a client, an accounting client, not needing to send out an engagement letter that we have to create from scratch was a huge help. Yeah. So the templates are really, really helpful to be able to repeat the words. So that way they really are. They're very professional looking. So migration, that's part of the conversation today. And then also, what about Microsoft? Like, what's happening? And I went ahead and I spilled the drink, so to say, and was sharing that here's the cocktail for today. I love it.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Awesome. That's so awesome. I love it. I'm having a LaCroix. And I would have made this, except that my children have my car and I'm stuck here at my house. And
well, so I didn't have the colored cubes, but I did have my little cubes.
That's awesome. I love it. Is that for the developer showdown?
It is, which is like, I guess this is vintage now.
It is. Right. So that's cool. I love it. I love that so much.
I am, we talked about this in the beginning, but any time that I can look at first the process and then to be able to evaluate and then automate, that's fun to me. And I'm willing to try quite a few different varieties and applications to be able to figure out what is our perfect tech stack. The thing that I've done over the years is I've gotten to the point that looking at automation, I have to be really clear, is it effective? And whenever I'm connecting another app, am I being intentional with my team's time, and are they learning something that's valuable, and how much time that actually goes into learning an application? So that's part of the decision making that happens for me. And then does that create efficiency? So if my team is learning how to use a new app, I want to make sure that they are also learning something that's going to help them with their job. I know Heather and I love a lot of shiny apps, but that doesn't always mean that it should be part of the tech stack. Sometimes it's just part of, we're testing it out because there might be a potential client that this would be a perfect fit for. And that's really nice. But what I want to share with you is this right here. So here's all of my apps, and I started looking at these going, okay, I've got Zoom. What all is available inside of Microsoft that I might be able to do to replace some of these apps that are here in front of you? So being able to replace DocuSign, being able to look at, in some applications, Zapier can be replaced by Power Automate. Slack can be replaced by Teams. My box subscription is about $2,000 a year. And so being able to eliminate that expense altogether for me is huge, because if I'm over inside of Microsoft and I'm already paying for my subscription, learning how to use the Microsoft environment to be able to collaborate, I just eliminated $2,000 off of, one app that I can eliminate. Zoom is the same way. So being able to use Teams and have meetings there, again, that's another app that if you're paying some monthly subscriptions and you're thinking about training your team and you're thinking about what apps are you using and paying for, the app expense can definitely climb. And so there's some opportunity for scaling back. What would you have to say about that, Heather?
Yeah, I think that, absolutely. I think that, it's easy to have that shiny, that shiny object syndrome. And then when you have to go back and look at your tech stack and see what exactly, how has it evolved? And I think that's a continuous journey for sure. I apologize to being distracted here, Liz, but I've been trying to fix the chat. The chat's not working. And so I was in there trying to figure out why. So yeah, it's very odd.
It's extraordinarily hard. I'm sorry. I didn't even catch that. So
yeah, so I'm working on that, everybody.
Okay. There's something that I can do to help. Tag me in. Otherwise, I'll just keep going and I'll show you. This is my real life scenario right here that I want to share with everybody. And it's pretty transparent, but here's my thought. I was onboarding and I was offboarding quite a big team last year. And what I realized was that I had a lot of subscriptions, and that meant I had a lot of passwords that were out there as well. So whenever I onboarded somebody, one, an account needed to be set up, and then two, some training needed to happen. And then three, if they didn't work out and we offboarded, then we also had this untangling of all of the subscriptions. And that was rough. So this is just a, one example of a workflow. Some other people are in different workflow tools. I know for us, because of working in a lot of the solutions is a huge part of what I enjoy doing. I was showing you an example of Monday and the formatting, and then here I'm showing you ClickUp. So we actually migrated from Monday over into ClickUp in the environment, and we had to then train the team on how do you get started inside of ClickUp. So all of the time that it takes to teach a team how to use an app can be it's a big drain on your resources that are available. So it's good to be intentional with which solutions are you choosing.
Definitely. I cannot agree more. Absolutely. All right. I fixed the chat. I win a prize.
Yay.
So we now have chat. Hey, everybody. And now I'm going to go over and I'm going to clean out the Q&A panel. So that's my next job. You keep going. You're doing great, Liz.
Oh, cool. So as far as the solutions that we're using a lot, OneDrive and SharePoint, Teams, we're heavily dependent on Teams being able to communicate back and forth. Outlook, that is one that whenever Heather and I were talking about migrating, I said, oh my gosh, but I love my Gmail. And that was hard for me to let go. Being able to move over into a format that I felt I was remembering the way that Microsoft email was before. And I was struggling with, oh my gosh, I feel like it's such a clean environment over inside of Gmail. I have to tell you a funny thing that happened this morning. Whenever I logged in, Gmail has a whole new look. So
Does
Gmail,
it?
yeah, it's going back towards, well, it's leaning towards some of the styling that happens over inside of Outlook. Oh, that was interesting. I don't know
Yeah,
if everybody's seen
it,
that, but
it's interesting because, you know, I felt the same way. I thought the Google interface was better, and we migrated over to, you know, Outlook, and Outlook does everything that it does everything that Google can do. So those folks that are saying, but, it does. So it's just a matter of learning how to do the things in Google inside Microsoft. So, you know, one of the things that it took me forever to actually do is to open up a Google Calendar inside Outlook. And yes, it can be done. And if you guys are trying to figure that out, you can reach out to me, because it took me quite a while to find the time. Not that I couldn't find the answer. It took me time to, I had to find the time to find the answer. But I did, and it does work. So it's pretty awesome. And that's the benefit, honestly, of working with a company that knows Microsoft and does those implementations. We actually worked with Practice Protect. They're now offering this type of service in the US. They've been doing it for quite a while in Australia and in New Zealand, but now they're offering it to the US market, and they did a fantastic job. It was so easy. You know, our technician that was helping us just every step of the way we knew what was happening. We planned out the implementation. It took us about 6 months from the time that we made the decision that we were going to migrate over to Microsoft to actually completely migrating everything, all our email and everything over. And I did that intentionally because when you're migrating a team, as you said, Liz, it's hard. Change is hard, and we're trying to get work done. And so trying to transition an entire company over at once is very disruptive. So what we did is we knew, we adopted, we bought it, and then we started to figure out, okay, what can we implement now that is going to help get buy-in to the whole transition for the entire team? And then what is going to be an instant win and cause the least amount of disruption along the journey? And so it was very, very carefully timed and executed by my team and the Practice Protect team.
and you and I both went with solutions to help us to migrate.
Mm-hmm.
And you use Practice Protect in order for that that lift from one to the other. We used Swissnet, and so Swissnet is a more of an IT. Yes, they also offer many of us here recognize them as QuickBooks hosting, but
Right.
they also are IT, and they have a whole branch that is part of what they do is migrate, so that way they can help to control subscriptions and security, and that's
Yeah.
who helped us, and they did the exact same thing. It was really important to, in our migration process, we needed to know which email addresses, who already had Microsoft subscriptions, who needed to maybe have a little bit more robust Microsoft subscriptions in order to prepare them to be able to use all of the apps that are inside of Microsoft. And I'll back up and I'll talk about my thought with the apps that are inside of Microsoft. When you look at so much that's available, the thing that I keep hearing over and over again, and I even felt it myself, and I still, to some degree, I feel like such a newbie, but there's so much available that you really have to think about them as apps. Microsoft calls them apps, and they genuinely are. So just like you would go and invest time in, how do I use Calendly? How do I use SharePoint? How do I use all these different apps? You have to do the same thing whenever you're thinking about Microsoft. It's an investment in that app, and you're learning the nuances. And then once you have a general idea of how to use that solution, what's cool is then being able to say, all right, now let's flip over into some fun automated pieces of it.
Totally.
And because they're inside of Microsoft, these apps, that thing that we have to do to connect our different apps, like being able to go into, for example, my Calendly, I have to make sure that my Google is not trying to override my Calendly or Zoom invites. So that way people don't get both a Google invite and they also get a Zoom invite. Some of those apps kind of sometimes fight each other, and you have to maneuver them to make sure that you remove the different extra links that it's trying to send out. Instead, because of being in a solution that's got all of the apps and they recognize each other, you don't have as much I would say, the Band-Aid piece of it is eliminated.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. And I think I love what you just said about thinking about each of the components within Microsoft 365 as an app. And that helps you to, to break down the implementation process when you think about it that way. Because I think one of the things that happens is you buy Microsoft 365 and you're like, okay, I got to implement it all at once. And I don't recommend that at all. I think that having it managed is the only way to make sure it's not disruptive to your team. So absolutely. And then Alexander wants to know, does this mean the happy hour is moving from Zoom to Teams? Man, we're in the middle of putting on our very first event in September, and so we are not switching anything right now.
Because big hearts.
Yeah, we're like, that's like a big old no. Will we someday? Possibly. Honestly, I've definitely switched over to Teams for my firm. And I've moved away. I don't use Zoom typically with my clients at this point. And the reason is, we'll talk about Teams in a few minutes, is because Teams has the functionality that it reduces a lot of the clicking and moving of files and understanding where things are. Everything's in one place. So I think that could be something definitely that we look at down the road, but for now we're going to stick with Zoom. Honestly, because Liz and I just don't have the capacity right now to make any huge changes with
I
that.
think that's part of making a smart decision, though, is when do you make this migration? How do you do it? And part of the reason why we used a solution like Swissnet to come in and do the heavy lifting of the migration is they were able to schedule meetings with us, and they would ask us questions. How many users do you have? What's the timeline? Can we meet with each one of those users? And inside of Happy Hour, it's Heather and I. So we've got our unicorn team that's in the background, but we don't have a solution that would be migrating us. So it would be us.
Right. It would be us. The good news is we've both done it before a couple times. So
yeah, that's true.
I think that'll be a fun thing for us to do once our camp is over.
Let's talk about access in Microsoft. We're talking about users. One of the things that I'm curious is, how are you working with other users? Are you inviting them into your Microsoft organization?
So the way we do it, no, we haven't invited people into our organization. What we do is the way we've handled sharing files. So first of all, my firm uses IPM, right? And Carbon, right? So same thing, IPM is the intuitized Carbon. So we use Carbon. So as far as sharing files, I prefer to do that right now by requesting it through IPM or Carbon. But we do have a folder for each one of our clients within SharePoint that we share with them where they can upload, and it's called client requests. So we are not inviting them in as users into our environment, but we are sharing areas of Microsoft with our clients.
Nice. And that's one of the things I really like about the options is that, yes, we can share documents back and forth, we can share folders back and forth. But the other thing that we have done is we're part of organizations, or other organizations are part of our organization as Microsoft, which allows us to be able to do some cool stuff with teams, and to be able to collaborate in, yes, instead of Zoom meetings, we're doing Teams meetings. So we should definitely, let me move us over here, because I think this will be a good, helpful thing. There's a big conversation about what's the difference between OneDrive and SharePoint. And do you hear this question also, Heather?
I do. Yes.
So it's nice to be able to break this down for a second. So OneDrive, if you think about your documents, where does your personal storage live? Maybe you're not wanting to share this with everybody inside of the teams or the organization. So, for example, my firm, Accounting Lifeline, maybe there's something that I'm working on internally and I don't want to share that out with the team yet. I'm going to have that over inside of my OneDrive. I even have, for another example, people also sometimes say, what if I have multiple Microsoft accounts? Because that's a real thing. So I have me as a person, I have my Microsoft account and I have my own personal OneDrive, and I've got my vault inside of there, and I have, maybe documents that I don't want to have anywhere else. So inside of OneDrive, think about that as being your personal storage. Maybe you have your personal pictures, and you can even think about, if you have a business OneDrive, that is actually separate than your personal OneDrive if you've got two different Microsoft accounts. Would you add anything on there to the OneDrive component?
Nope. No, I think you did that perfectly. Absolutely.
Cool. Okay. And then so as far as SharePoint, whenever I think about SharePoint, here's where I start to think about, now I'm going to start communicating with my group, my team. So I want to be able to maybe have a Word document. An example of something that was happening this morning with the Accounting Lifeline team is we needed to write in some nuances on a client. What we need to look out for this every single month. This seems to be a repeat behavior. Let's document this so we have somebody who's going on vacation. That way another team member can see that coming in. And we opened up Excel and we started plopping in some thoughts. And because we were all able to collaborate and look at that via SharePoint, we're all able to make changes if necessary, or just to view somebody else's live updated changes. You have anything else that you want to throw in about SharePoint, Heather?
So SharePoint is, the difference between SharePoint is, yes, there's the document storage piece of it, but it's oh so much more. So SharePoint is actually building out a site that has all kinds of different components, as Liz was alluding to. So the document storage is just a piece of that. The other thing that I would say about SharePoint is that it becomes platform wide. So one of the things that Microsoft has done really, really well is they have made it, their search engine within the Microsoft platform is very powerful, meaning that if I'm in Microsoft Teams and I need to share a file with somebody, I can actually search for that file right within Teams and share it with them without having to go to my file directory or logging in somewhere. I can just search for it within there and add it. Everything within the Microsoft 365 environment is incredibly accessible. In fact, if you're working on a Microsoft machine, which you don't have to, you can actually use Microsoft 365 with a Mac. You can. But if you're working with it on a Windows run machine, it actually, if you use Microsoft Edge, then your computer actually starts to feel like an intranet, right, between your organization. And that's essentially what it is that you're creating this intranet in your organization where you can search for files, you can search for people, you can search for appointments. It's got a very strong search engine across the entire platform, which just makes things easy because everything is super accessible no matter where you are. It's very, very cool.
I want to say that. Intranet. Say that again.
Intranet.
Intranet. I love it. I love it. So I want to answer a couple of questions that were inside of chat.
Sure.
And one of the questions was, Alexander, 100%. OneDrive, me, SharePoint, us. Yes.
Yes.
And then Mandy, you had said, would SharePoint be able to take over Smart Vault? I am somebody who I've used Smart Vault, I've used ShareFile, I've used Box, and yes, SharePoint would be able to, Microsoft would be able to take over all pieces of that, and you'd have your storage of your documents and be able to collaborate.
You can, yes, you can. If you're working with clients that are also in the Microsoft environment, it becomes, as Liz had said earlier, even more dynamic because now you're able to collaborate in a very seamless way. If you have somebody that is not on Microsoft, then they still would need to download, upload, and do things like that. They're not going to have that real-time collaboration option. That being said, anybody can sign up for a free account, a personal account, business account. It's not expensive. The Microsoft licensing is actually still very inexpensive. So that's another, huge benefit to it is you get all this power and you're really paying a very, very modest fee for your technology. So
I agree. And so I want to kind of break down some of the questions that I get asked is, how do you use OneDrive? How do you use whenever you're thinking about SharePoint? And so if I break this down for just a second, it's being able to think about also OneDrive gives it away in their logo that it is a cloud application. Now you can sync it to your computer, but my thought is I don't want to have a copy of it on my computer. The whole reason that I'm switching, the whole reason that we are a cloud-based firm is I want to, at any point, any of our terminals, basically that's all they are, that is accessing our network to be able to say, here's where we're working. It doesn't have to have any documents that are stored on the hard drive. So hardware is less important to me than being able to have my internet of software.
Absolutely. And I mean, you do have the file mapping, which makes it feel like the files are on your computer, and there are settings so you can choose. Are there files that you want always available on your computer, or are there files that you want to download on demand? So when you're setting up that that local file sync within SharePoint or even OneDrive, you do have the ability to choose how often that data syncs back. That being said, you also need to make sure that you have somebody that is very well versed in managing a Microsoft environment. So, it's great if you're just using the web-based version where you're just accessing it through a browser, then it's super easy, right? Because everything's done right there through a browser, right? But if you are using the desktop components of Microsoft 365, it's helpful to have a company like Swissnet or Practice Protect in your back pocket, so that if you start to have a couple of little hiccups, like we had when we first migrated over to SharePoint, some of our team members were having trouble with that sync, and we had somebody that we could go to and say, we can't figure out why this is happening, and they were able to fix it with a couple of clicks. So those are the things where really having somebody to work with you as you're going through the migration and help to offset your learning curve is incredibly valuable.
And it's easy, it's very transparent, I also think, to be able to figure out where do your documents live. And so here we're looking at, this is OneDrive that's mapped, so we're able to access it, and we can see right there where the status is with the cloud.
Yep.
That's how you're able to know where is it living. So it lives on the cloud. If we had told Microsoft that we wanted all of our documents to sync over, that cloud would be replaced with the little green emblem icon that looks like a check mark, and that way you would know you've got it in both locations. And do you want that? So it kind of helps you with managing the location.
Right. I just want to stop for a minute and people are asking about how does Microsoft interact with other applications like Lisio and Carbon. And the answer to that is, I mean, it's more complex than the very simplistic answer that I'm going to give you. I use Carbon, so I can speak very intelligently to that. I don't currently use Lisio, but I believe it's very similar. They work in tandem. So, Carbon actually sits on top of either the Exchange or the Outlook, right, platform. So it's reading your emails. So you still have the ability to go into outlook.com or use Outlook on your computer if you needed to get access to your emails. But Carbon actually sits on top of it, and it actually pulls the it acts like an email client, right? So it's pulling your emails from the Microsoft server so that you can interact with it inside of the Carbon interface. And I believe Lisio is starting to add some file integration as well. I don't know how far they are on this, but I do know they were working on OneDrive integration. And I believe Carbon actually is rolling out their OneDrive integration very soon, which is really exciting.
Well, and I'll stay too. I was saying hi to Rob Smith earlier, and so he's actually from the Lisio team. So he's joining us, and he's over in chat. So he could probably answer the question about Lisio and OneDrive, what kind
That's a great idea.
Options have happened there. So we appreciate you jumping into chat. But when we're thinking about SharePoint, this is where we get to start accessing our multitude of apps. So here's where we get to start pulling in and collaborating and in that business type of networking, have access to bookings and being able to have access to Outlook. And through SharePoint, that's how we're managing as a team.
Right. And bookings is just so I want to talk to the slide for a minute, Liz, just to explain. These are the Microsoft apps, but I think it would be really useful for people to see which apps they may be using now that these Microsoft apps would replace. So bookings would replace Acuity or Calendly. So bookings gives you the ability, and it has a lot of the same features that you see in either one of those apps, but it allows, you can create multiple calendars, you can share calendars, you can block off your time. The only thing that you can't do currently with bookings is you can't monetize it. So if you're needing to monetize your calendar, meaning that somebody has to pay you before, you could do something with automation to make that happen, but it's not out of the box. So if you're using Calendly, you can absolutely accomplish what you're doing in Calendly, except for the monetization with bookings. Same thing with Acuity. So that would replace that. Slack and Zoom are replaced by Microsoft Teams. Do you want to talk about that, Liz? I think.
Yeah, I've got and let me pull in some examples because that one will be fun to show. But I do think that it's great to call out some of these other apps that are on here. Like Word, Excel, and PowerPoint all feel familiar, but Microsoft Forms, those of you who are really comfortable with Google Forms, Microsoft has got the same thing going on. So being able to have logic inside of a questionnaire to be able to say, maybe you're onboarding. One of the ways that we've used Google Forms in the past is we're onboarding a client and we're asking them the business name, maybe the various different identification about the company. And then we move over into other questions that are, what accounting software are you using? And then being able to ask what payroll. Well, if they don't have payroll, that logic says to them, okay, move down and skip the rest of these questions. Otherwise, if they do have payroll, then it would ask them what payroll solution and who has access and who's managing it. So the same type of forms would be available over inside of Microsoft.
And what's really cool about the Microsoft Forms is that when you couple that with the Power Automate, right, you can actually create some really useful templates. So one of the first ones that we created when we implemented was like requesting time off. So when our team members wanted to request time off, they could go into Teams and they had a little tab at the top of Teams that said request time off. They click on it. It was just a Microsoft form. When they filled that out, we were able to set up automations for approval and even updating calendars. So the sky's the limit, and it's pretty powerful. It's aptly named for sure.
Power Automate, yeah, for sure. And I know that some people have used Yammer for connecting, even I think Woodard, that they use Yammer, and it's more of like a group type of chat. So instead of being a Facebook group, you have a Yammer group, and you can collaborate and share resources inside of Yammer. What's some other ones that are on here? That OneNote, oh my gosh, so Rob Smith is here with us. One of his specialties is OneNote, which is pretty darn cool. And I love the way, Rob, I'm probably gonna botch this up. I'm not gonna say it the way that you do, but the way that Rob was explaining OneNote is I heard him say, if you think about OneNote being your notebook, but you have your notebook and you might have multiple pages or tabs inside of that notebook that have structure to them. So you might have your notebook with a tab that says, your client name, and inside of that client name, you open up the tab and you have multiple different links to additional information. Maybe you have an Excel sheet in there. Maybe you have a Word doc in there. Maybe you have other pieces that are inside there. So you're building out what could essentially turn a notebook, which has multiple different pages in it of information, including Google Excel sheets or Word docs. But then also, if you think about it being expanded into a file folder cabinet. So now all of a sudden you can have not only your client information, but you can have your firm information and, all of the various details that are needed from our world, it takes a whole lot of information in order to be able to perform our jobs. We need to have statements. We need to be able to have software. We need to be able to have client communication. We need to have all of these different pieces and team collaboration. And then to be able to say, what's our workflow? If you think about OneNote as being the place that would start to hold and contain all of the information that pertains to one client or a group of client or your firm, that's the way that you can start using OneNote to be able to document a lot of and strategize and structure a lot of processes and just information in general. Do you have anything that you would want to add on about OneNote?
I don't think so. I mean, I really love it. There's, you know, again, automation opportunities there, but it is, you can really organize your work very, very well with it. The other one that I've never used this, but have you tried Sway?
I haven't used Sway. No. And of course, you know, whenever I see something that's a shiny new object, of course, you know what happens.
I do.
So maybe you and I need to have a Sway party.
I think we have to have a Sway party for sure.
And then we'll update everybody and tell us about our Sway party.
Definitely.
So whenever I'm thinking about pulling in all of the various pieces and looking at why would I switch over to Outlook whenever I've been so comfortable over inside of Gmail for so long? Here's the reason why, y'all. It's all connected. Look right there. It says share to Teams. I'm inside. You're seeing an image of email. So inside of my email, I'm automatically able to grab some information, push it over into my team chat. So essentially what that would be doing is taking maybe a client has emailed a question and I want to be able to take it out of my inbox and I want to share it with the team. Well, now what I'm able to do is instead of copy paste Slack and then come back to email, it's like here we would be able to, let's just share this communication thread with the team, and then they're able to start weighing in on collaboration as well. The other thing that can happen is say that you want to share forward over information that maybe you've got over inside of SharePoint. You can want to be able to pull some documents over or create, maybe you got a team meeting and it turns into now, I can't tell you how many times this happens. We'll internally be talking in the accounting firm about needing to have a client meeting, but we wanted to take notes and then we want to store those notes. So then we want to be able to create a client agenda whenever we meet with them. Now here's where we started talking about several different layers. We're having a team meeting. We have our meeting inside of Teams. Now there's a date stamp that happens inside of Teams, but then we also piled on top of that. We said we want to be able to have a client meeting and here's our agenda for that client meeting. So all of these layers that start to get laid on to this one tasking that essentially is going to be meeting with the client. Now we're able to start organizing it. And let me see if I've got my next screenshot here. So here's a great example. If I wanted to be able to say, here's my meeting, and I've had a meeting with a team member and I've recorded the team meeting, the recording of that meeting automatically is synced to Microsoft Teams. And I've already got inside of my chat a copy or a thread of anything that happened that would be conversations that would be going back and forth. The other piece of that happens automatically is being able to have access to even the wiki. So Heather, I think that you're using the wiki for being able to build out internal documentation to say, here's how we do things. If there's a client that has a question, if there's a team member that has a question, then you can go over to your wiki and you can say, here's our processes.
That's right. Absolutely. That was actually something that we created, and I can actually, see if I can get in there and show you what we did. Let's see.
Do you want me to stop sharing screen? That way you
Give
can.
me a minute, because I think I have to log into.
Well, then while you're doing that, I'll go ahead and talk through.
Okay,
So this
yeah,
is
yeah.
a screenshot of Microsoft Teams, of those of you who may or may not have used it. If you look at it on your navigation bar, So the activity, what's cool about this is before I had to tie my Google Calendar into my Slack and connect the two apps in order to be able to get a Slack reminder that I have an upcoming appointment. Well, because of switching over into the Microsoft environment, automatically that feature is built into Teams. So if you have you're having a meeting and you need a reminder that, hey, it's time to stop maybe being heads down at a task, got a meeting that's coming up, that reminder, that activity will help you. The other thing is chat. So I can create a group of chats where I can maybe network with somebody who's outside of our organization. So I could actually send over a group messaging to be able to collaborate. And then if I think about calendar, here's where I'd be able to pull my calendar. Calls, there's a lot of people who are using the huddle feature inside of Slack. This would replace that. So you'd have it right at the same kind of level of like maybe how you think about Slack. And then files is going to be able to pull in, how are you accessing your documents? Being able to pull anything over. Like I was saying, I wanted to be able to share with the team, what do we want to talk to the client about? What's our agenda going to be? And so being able to collaborate in one spot and then see those notes really easy, that's another reason that it's nice to have an integrated software like this, because it's already got these pieces in the background connected, where I'm not needing to go in and create these types of connections, because it's Microsoft that has all of these apps sitting right on top of it. Heather, did that give you some time to
It did.
pull up?
It did give me some time.
Okay.
So let me go ahead and I'll share mine. So can you guys see my screen? Hopefully you're seeing the right one. Seeing tips and tricks?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So in this is a team called Tips and Tricks. And then up here I've got my wiki, and we've started building this. It's still a work in process. But what it does is it's a place where everyone on my team can go and they can find information to help them when they're doing their job. So I use Scribe a lot to to create step-by-steps for my team. And so I can just take that and put this in here. The other thing that we do is we'll just copy, I'll go out to support for QuickBooks and I'll just copy and paste what's there with a link to it, so that people can go through and find the information. So we have all these little subcategories. So if people are looking for how to do something in a particular application, they can just click on it and they can find resources related to this. So we have the accounting basics, which I borrowed from this article. And what it does is it allows my team to go in and find information and have cheat sheets. So this is across my entire team. And what I would do is just, when I had a couple extra time, maybe when I'm eating my lunches, I would go out and I would start copying and pasting into this wiki. And I'm telling you, my team loved it. They loved it because they were able to go through and find this index of all these different support articles that were super helpful to them. So this is right within my teams. And you can see that, within our company, we had all these different channels for different purposes. Our staff meetings, one of the things, and obviously I can't open it, but in our staff meetings, what was nice about having a channel for staff meetings is that we were able to then have an agenda for each staff meeting. All of the recordings were automatically saved. So anybody that missed a staff meeting didn't have to go look for a folder to find the video for the staff meeting. All they had to do was click in the staff meeting column or team, click over here onto the agendas, figure out which one they wanted to watch, and then click the video. So everything is encapsulated into Teams in such an incredibly straightforward and intuitive way that it just makes sense. It just makes it easy for your team to collaborate. So, and then we had other things, so, like company policies, our human resources had our time off. So right at the top where Liz was showing you these different, these different tabs that you can add, all I have to do is click on the little plus, and then I can go through and I can select whatever it is that I want to build. So if I have tasks by planner, I could add that here. I could add a form. I could add a whiteboard. I could actually link out to other apps that we use. Like, we use Lucidchart. and sign now. So all of these things can be added to the top of that. You can even add a website. So let me just show you, let me add a website. Where is it? Where can I see it? Show you how easy this is. So say I wanted to put in the status.intuit.com, right? And we'll put that in status https / status.intuit.com. And I save it. Well, now what's going to happen for my tips and tricks is now my team can come out here and they can click on status.intuit.com, and hopefully it's going to work. Sometimes it takes a minute to refresh and the website should come up. Oh, let me click on that. Sometimes you have to click away. Here's our pet channel. Let me go back into my tips and tricks and see if it is going to pull it up. And of course, that was a total, I probably put it in wrong. Yeah, I put it in wrong. So it's not that. I think it might be status QuickBooks.com. So I get an F on that. But you guys get the point. So that is how powerful it is. Let me see if I can edit it because I do want it to work. Settings. I think it might be QuickBooks.com. Save. And then let's see. If this doesn't work, then. Yeah, for some reason it's not working. But anyway, we've done that. And one of the things that we did is like in our teams, I wanted all my happy hour stuff in the same place. So I could actually add a tab for happy hour, and it actually had the website for our email and our calendar and all the other things that we do on happy hour right within Teams, which made it easy. I didn't have to go anywhere else, which was awesome. Thank you, Dina. She shared the link with me. So,
oh, nice.
Thank you.
So thank you for showing that, because you've definitely built out a nice platform for being able to, one, support your team, and then also clients that you're working with. Let me share my screen again. And
I got it to work. So before you share, I want to share mine because I need to have that closure in my life. There we go. There's the closure. So in my tips and tricks, now we have status.intuit.com. We can go back to the wiki. And then anytime my team wants to see what the status is of QuickBooks, it's right here. Pretty darn cool. So
that's great.
Yeah. Sorry for the not knowing the URL off the top of my head.
That works out perfect. I think what I want to show
Yeah.
is we were talking about, let's see, let me get back one screen, because the thing that we've been talking about is all of the apps that are included. And I've been talking about some of the features here that I use. And so far, nothing that we have talked about pulled in any type of automation. But next week, we're going to do a episode where Heather's going to do more about Power Automate and how she's using it. So to give you just a bit of a teaser as to what's to come, I want to share, here's a couple of workflows. So there's two different ones here that I want to share with you. One of these is, if you're thinking about Microsoft as an environment that has lots of different opportunities in it, for being able to already have these apps connected, now how can you start to use these apps that are already connected and then create automations? That's what's super cool about Microsoft. That's the thing that the convenience is what I've shown you up to this point.
Right.
The convenience is enough.
And you're on the wrong screen, Liz, just FYI. You're showing us.
Oh, what am I showing?
You're showing us your the PowerPoint speaker view.
Oh, well.
You can still see it. It's all good.
Now am I showing the right screen?
Yes, you are.
Oh, cool. Okay, cool. All right. So here's where we've got Power Automate open. So it's another app. So up here, anytime you see these little dots, you can go and click on your grid, your square grid, and then start opening up the various different apps. And this particular app that's open is the Power Automate app. And here is a workflow that our really good buddy Sam, he shared over and he was like, what if you wanted to be able to create an automation for an approval? And for him, it's a document. So he's got an automation that says when a document is created, then go over and have the next action that's going over to his profile, and then go over and say, I want to have approval. So do you want to be able to send this over to different people's names? Are there pieces of information that you put in the body? And then next you can make this decision as to apply to each, run our flow. And so here's where you start saving the time. Up to this point, I still feel like all of the apps are really cool and they're worth it, but this is where I'll share in my, let me share in an example that many of us have as pro advisors. Let me share the right screen. So as pro advisors, I got that ready and then, oh, there it is. Okay. Many of us have pro advisory accounts, and those emails come into our inbox. And once they come into our inbox, they sit there and we need to do something with them. But it takes a while to get back. And by the time, I know for myself, by the time I get back, it's sometimes 3 days later. Well, that's not really great customer service. So being able to say inside of the Microsoft environment, what we did was we created an automation that says, if you see the tag pro advisor, then what I want you to do is then take that email and respond to it with this response. And then that response is then going to trigger another event, which is going to notify our team that we have this new engagement. So here's the flow of what that looks like. So this is saying Power Automate, we need to create some type of client response that's timely. So an email comes in that's a pro advisor lead. This pro advisor lead then triggers this automation that says inside of Power Automate, our new lead is now going to create a new message through our automation that we've set up. And this is going to walk you through all of the steps so that way we can share this with you. So when the new email arrives, what we want to tag is the subject line of Find a Pro Advisory. The next thing that we want to do is then reply. So how do we want to respond to that new lead? And we want to tell them, hey, book some time with us. Here's some information about our firm. And then, yes, we want to make sure that there's a Calendly link or our bookings link that's in there. And then next, what we want to do is maybe we want to make sure our team knows that we have this new lead, and we want to tell them the subject line is actually going to be part of our email. So out automatically goes the email to the client, plus they get the calendar link. And then next you're going to see, here's the PDF saying, here's all the services. And so far, all of this is automation. And now the team gets notified that there has been a new client lead from the pro advisor community. That's whenever I think it starts getting pretty cool.
That is definitely where it starts getting cool, for sure.
So we have spent our hour talking about Microsoft and answering questions, and I feel like we just scratched the surface, Heather.
We did. You're right. It is. There's so much. I mean, and the thing is that, you know, I both of us have implemented this within the last year. So I made the decision to migrate to Microsoft from Google about a year ago in August. Well, I know it was a year ago in August, and we completed our migration in January and had built out our entire team's environment and our processes. I would say by the end of February, we were kind of done with that whole process. And Liz, I think you started your journey when, in like April-ish?
I did, and by June we were fully migrated.
It's fantastic. So it is possible. What I would say is, you know, I shared in the chat both Practice Protect site and Swissnet site. Both of them can help you if you're looking for somebody to help you do that migration. And I highly recommend it. Unless you have a dedicated IT team within your firm, having an expert on the outside that understands the nuances of Microsoft is really important. The other thing, the other call out that I would say is Woodard. So Woodard also has, they have a Microsoft boot camp. And they also do Microsoft training. So, and consulting.
And if you don't mind, I think that Rob might be with us. Rob has also got a community inside of the Lisio environment. And what Rob's really been working on is putting in how-tos. So a lot of information and guides. So if we still have Rob with us, that would be a really good resource to check out. Otherwise, what I think I'm going to say is, Heather, you're going to be talking on our next episode
About Power Automate.
about Power Automate. Yeah, and I want to get that pulled up right here, so that way everybody's
Yeah.
able to see what we've got coming up next.
Yep. And I think you're showing the wrong screen again, huh?
Darn. I've got too many little things open right now, so let me share screen. Let's see. I wanted to give everybody a chance to be able to see your Power Automate session. Am I sharing the right screen this
Now
time?
you're sharing, yes, you're now sharing the right
Okay.
one. So yeah, so on August 23rd, we're gonna take an hour into Power Automate. Now that being said, we're gonna do, Liz gave you an overview. We're gonna focus on what it is, the different features of it, and then we'll build a simple one. But keep in mind, Power Automate is huge, and I'm gonna get you excited about it, and then we're gonna have to keep the conversation going to really dig in and seize the power of Power Automate. Did you like how I did that, Liz?
I love it.
So I'm excited.
I'm very happy.
Dina's saying that Woodard's doing another Microsoft 365 boot camp in October. Yeah, that's great. And Dina said that she just finished the class last month, and it's a lot of info, and it is a lot of info. And I think that's why having somebody who's an expert in it is really helpful, for sure.
I agree. And also, a buddy up community definitely helps too.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things, another tip that I'll give you is that when we went through it, we for about 6 weeks had Friday meetings where we talked about it as a team, and we did that through the whole process, where we were able to share, right, things that we'd learned. And we're also able to share troubles we were having. So other members of the team might have figured something out, and having that huddle every week to talk about how the migration was going and how everybody felt about it was incredibly helpful and supportive for our team, and made the migration go that much better. So I strongly recommend that if you have more than one person in your firm. Oh,
super helpful information.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
Well,
Liz. That was awesome.
Yeah, it was fun. So I want to thank you, Heather, for turning my arm, and I said, okay, yes, because it definitely has been a fun journey, and there's plenty to learn. I can tell you, I just scratched the surface, and I want more. And Heather's going to give us some more next week. So I hope everyone, not next week, the 23rd. Everybody
on vacation next week.
Oh, have a great vacation.
Thanks.
All right, everyone. We'll see you all soon. Bye.
Bye, everybody.